right, welcome to the show where we share the stories of the many who intersect with our healthcare system but are rarely heard from. My name is Kevin Poe, founder and editor of Kevin MD. Today on the show, we welcome back Michele Luckenbaugh. She is a patient advocate and she wrote the Kevin MD article, A Message from a Patient to Healthcare Workers, Always Remember Your Humanity. Michele, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. It's great to be here today.
So for those who didn't get a chance to listen to our first episode together, can you briefly share your story and journey to where you are today?
As a patient advocate, how I got into that area specifically was back about 10 years ago, I suffered a heart attack. And once I got through that experience, I felt the need to join patient advocacy groups. So I belong to a few, briefly. Patient Partners, which is an organization where our members give feedback to the health systems that we're members of, either our experiences dealing within a family practice office or other services that the health system provides for us. Also a member of a patient family advisory council related specifically to cardiovascular issues. And again, over the years, we've contributed numerous improvements to the care of the cardiac patient when hospitalized. Most recently, we gave feedback on the construction of a new cardiovascular building, which I'm happy to give the update today that it is was opened this spring and is fully operational. And then lastly, I'm a member of our local heart patient support group, Helping Hearts, where we do give support and encouragement to all of our members. We do have educational sessions where we bring in cardiologists, heart surgeons, dietitians, all issues related to the heart, maintaining a healthy heart. Part of that membership, I visited heart patients when they were placed in the hospital for procedures, either visits pre or post procedure, just to give them support and encouragement and impress upon the fact that when they are discharged from the hospital, there's a life there waiting for them that can be, in fact, better than what they had previously.
You've written so many articles to my clinician audience from a patient perspective. Why do you think it's important for clinicians to hear these stories and viewpoints from the patient perspective?
I consider the relationship between physicians, nurses, others involved in healthcare professions. We form a partnership, and eventually what affects you will eventually trickle down to the care of the patients. So in a way, the voice that I use in some of my articles tends to not only be directly concerned with patients, but some of the issues that you all are dealing with in carrying out your professions in healthcare. So there is a strong relationship. Not everybody necessarily agrees with that. I know sometimes as a physician, you get the negative viewpoint of some patients, but I think if we were to take a survey overall, we place our lives in your hands, and that requires a certain amount of trust and respect.
All right, let's talk about now your Kevin MD article that you wrote. It's titled A Message from a Patient to Healthcare Workers, Always Remember Your Humanity. Now, for those who didn't get a chance to read your article, can you just walk my audience through it and share the story of why you decided to write it?
Well, I've been a follower of your site, Kevin, for probably since the time I did have my heart attack. And I've been reading, the articles that have been written by physicians, nurses, other healthcare professionals. And I've noticed over the last few years, there's kind of been a change somewhat in the tone of many of the articles. I sense a bit of anger, a bit of frustration, sadness, despair. And I think many times it comes from feeling that you don't have a voice in the work environment that you work with. Certainly the onslaught of COVID didn't make matters any better. Those of you that have been working on the front lines, present or past, are at the point of almost sheer exhaustion, especially for those individuals who you find in your ICUs that have ignored, getting vaccinated, wearing masks, and sometimes they can leave the hospital. More often than not, unfortunately, they pass away. So I felt the need to do this topic. I came across this statement the other day, and it kind of summarizes, I think, the general feeling across healthcare. It says, "Here's to another day of outward smiles and inward screams." That speaks volumes to me. Probably some of your audience would question, why on earth would someone like me, a patient, be trying to give advice to those of you that are in healthcare? And well, I might mention that one of my children is a family medicine physician. Some of my friends are physicians or nurses. So I've got a chance to see a bit what it is to sit on the other side of the desk. I certainly don't presume to know how it is to walk in your shoes, but I get a sense of some of the issues that you all have to face. Well, put it this way, I've lived several decades of life, and in that time period, I've had different health crises come up, and I've had to come up with solutions to kind of get me through them or around them. And so those are some of the things that I eventually would like to share with your viewers today.
So why don't we go ahead, share some of those lessons that you've learned over the past few decades that would resonate with my clinician audience.
Well, as that one key word in the title says, remember your humanity. And put it in simple terms, we're all human beings. And even though sometimes your patients might kind of put you up on a platform that you should be able to fix anything, any illness, any disease, but the reality is, again, you are human beings. And even though you try your darndest based on your experience, your education, your training, there are some situations, some individuals that cannot be healed. And unfortunately, maybe pass away. So this is a reality that you need to deal with and can come to terms with and hopefully move on. Another thing is, and many of us will do this, you tend to compartmentalize your life. You try to separate your workday from your family life. And, generally speaking, that works out to a certain extent. But have you ever found yourself in a situation where you lay down, put your head down on your pillow, close your eyes, try to fall off to sleep, and then you have a replay of those hardships, those problems that you faced during the course of the day? And here's where a second or an additional lesson comes up. Have a support system in place for yourself. For example, a support system may be formed by fellow colleagues within your hospital, your practice, where you can discuss those issues, those stressors that cause you the anxiety. The simple action of this sharing can help alleviate that stress level, and potentially can maybe come up with remedies to them. And you might say, well, I don't have anything like that exists at present. Take the action to form one. You might be surprised how easy it is to come up with a group of fellow colleagues that are willing. And, as the saying goes, two heads are better than one. And just the simple fact of getting this anxiety, this stress, this anger off your chest does work wonders at times. Your support system can also be your partner or spouse or trusted friends, anyone that you can place your trust in and have a direct and honest conversation with. This other one, I think we always tell our children this in regards to telling white lies. what's the big deal? White lies don't hurt anything in the long viewpoint of life. But the most important point I want to make is that don't tell these lies to yourself. In other words, face those fears, those potential weaknesses that you consider, and set about to find solutions, find remedies to them. And again, referring back to that support system for potential assistance along those lines. This other point I learned probably about the time I had the heart attack. And it was, if you were told that you had only 24 hours to live, what would be those people, those activities that would come into your mind? And for the most part, those are the people, those are the activities that bring you the most joy, the most self-satisfaction. And as you know, busy professionals, sometimes they get placed to the background. And what I'm asking you all to do is bring them to the forefront, because they can serve as those lifelines, so to speak, for you, get you in touch with your inner self, the true self. And that's someone that you do never want to lose sight of. I did a little research, as I usually do, online, and I came up with some information in regards to a very well-known Holocaust survivor, Viktor Frankl. And as your viewers know, he was imprisoned for a period of years under horrible conditions, but he survived emotionally. He kept a positive attitude, which amazes me. One particular statement I came across, and I'll read. He says, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude, to choose one's own way." That attitude is, in my mind, the beginning and end of everything. The attitude in which you bring forth to face any important life situation, any crisis in your life. And I'm going to use myself as a personal example. Back 10 years ago, when I had the heart attack, it was like a rug just was pulled out from under my feet. And I said, how on earth am I going to get back the life that, I had planned to live? And, for a short period of time, I kind of wallowed in just that wonderment. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do everything in my power to get back my life. And with the help of my doctors, family, and friends, I did do that. I did recover emotionally and physically. But then, as life works its wondrous ways, 3 years later, I was informed that I was to have surgically removed what was a very suspicious thyroid, suspicious in terms of cancer. And at the same time, same surgical time, I was to have a very, very diseased gallbladder, which actually turned out to be the more involved of the two surgeries. But the point being is, again, I found myself down in the basement, so to speak. I put in all that earlier effort and work, got myself physically, mentally fit, and now I was more or less in a similar position. And that took a little wherewithal, but I realized, I wasn't a quitter, and I was going to do, again, everything within my power to get back what I had, attained previously. And again, through my doctors and those around me, I was able to do that. So again, the attitude that you bring to any life situation is very valuable. Speaking of that, mental attitude, we hear the term burnout, physician burnout, nurse burnout being bannered about continually, especially the last 5 to 10 years. And you hear the term in the same breath, resiliency. And, you need to be more resilient. And to put it in terms of slang terms, deal with it. it's not as bad as what you think. Now, I'm not discounting the characteristic of being resilient. It is helpful in all situations. But at least in my opinion, you all are resilient people, just from the simple fact that you endured all the training, education in which you had to go through to attain the positions that you are. So, again, my opinion, it's going to take a bit more than resiliency to fix what's wrong in our healthcare systems. And that issue needs to be addressed. Lastly, I guess one of my last life lessons, so to speak, is to ask yourself the big questions, but more importantly, to listen to the answers that you give yourself. And this is where it's important not to tell yourself those little white lies. Be honest with yourself. Use your voice to potentially share those concerns with others. Use your voice to hopefully bring about solutions and remedies to the health systems that employ you.
We're talking to Michele Luckenbaugh. She is a patient advocate. She wrote the Kevin MD article, A Message from a Patient to Healthcare Workers. Always remember your humanity. Michele, thank you so much for sharing those life lessons. I was wondering if you had a take-home message that you want to leave my Kevin MD audience with.
I would first divide it into two parts. To the doctors and nurses, I would say you deserve to feel joy, to be happy, to feel satisfaction in a job well done. You deserve that and so much more. But at the same time, your patients deserve to have the best possible version of you sitting or standing before them. So again, I ask you to make use of those support systems, to use your voice, to bring about needed changes that need to take place in the systems that we all are members of. To the health administrators, I would say, come to realize the true value of those highly and skilled professionals that you employ. You know, they are not simply cogs in that corporate machine. Listen to their concerns, but more importantly, act upon them so that when they come into work, they're feeling energized rather than feeling more or less beleaguered and despair. If this can be performed, then those physicians, those nurses actually can do the primary task that they were assigned, and that is healing and comforting the sick. And again, if changes are made, we're all going to be the benefactors of it.
Michele, thank you so much for sharing your time and insight. And thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you, Kevin.